What's up, sales players?
What's up? What's up, everybody? How we doing? It's been a while since it's just been you and me, Jesse.
Yeah, we've been busy. We've had a lot of guests and guest prep work and things like that behind the scenes, so we just have not had a chance to sit down and record a random episode like this. But we were talking and we were brainstorming on some of our favorite business, sales, must-read books, and we thought it'd be a good idea to just go through our top three, maybe not our top three of all time, but just three impactful books, recommendations that might help you if you're in an early sales SaaS startup doing sales or go to market, are going to be really cool books to go check out. So you want to kick us off, Chase, with your, maybe call it your number three influential sales or go to market book?
Yeah, so one thing about me is I don't come from a traditional SaaS sales background. So one thing that really helped me was this Challenger sales book. This is a whole methodology, and it just does a lot of data from, I think, around the 2008 era of a bunch of different sales tactics and really like challenging the sellers and the buyers. And it's just a great overall book. And that's my number three choice.
Yeah.
You may go with the second.
That's probably, I'll do my third, but I want to comment on Challenger sale because that's one that was recommended to me early on in my sales career too. And yeah, it's like you said, it's '08, I think was the time frame. It's a little bit of a legacy book, if you will, but very valuable. And just that ability to challenge in a polite way, I would say. It's not be a jerk to your prospects, but try to help reframe their thinking is pretty revolutionary in the space.
Yeah, and it gives you sort of some baseline. So what's your number three?
Yeah, my number three is, I've got a couple here, and these are honestly in no particular order, but I'll share. This was a big one for me. It's the Sales Development Playbook by Trish Bertuzzi. If anybody out there listening is connected to Trish, help us get her on the show. She is amazing. She's one of the foremost thought leaders in go-to-market sales, prospecting, outbound, all that stuff. And so she wrote this, the Sales Development Playbook. And this was given to me in a really critical period. I went through a transition from being a frontline seller or SDR to then managing an SDR team. And I was in an early stage startup at the time. I had no training, no enablement. We rolled up under the VP of sales, who was a very busy person who was running the field sales team. I had not very many resources at my disposal besides just occasional conversations with leadership on how to do this. And I suddenly found myself managing a 4-person SDR team. And suddenly this book came out of nowhere. Somebody recommended it to me and said, book. Yeah, it still to this day in 2024, I still reference a lot of her suggestions for how to do outreach. That's phone. She has some phone scripts in here. There's an email template that still works. Yep. It will always work. Short, pain or problem focused email. She has some great suggestions around just the operational side of building out a team, how to coach people, mindset stuff. It's really surprising, it's not a super thick book, as you can see if you're watching.
It's a good read.
But it's a really good read, and she crammed a bunch of amazing insights into this.
Yeah, like the one thing I took, actually remember just driving around, listening to a Jesse Woodbury podcast episode, and you recommended that. And this is one thing that I would say to anybody listening to this episode. If you hear somebody recommend a book, like, just go buy it. It's $15 or $20. You can get it on Amazon or you can get it on Audible. But like, that book really helped me to understand basically how the restaurant works in the SaaS world, and just wrapping my head around what is an SDR, what is an AE, what is a VP, and just what happens when inbound is not working, what happens when outbound is not, you got too much. What do you need to do? What do you need to do if you have too little? So great. And great one.
Don't let the title fool you. If you're an AE out there listening, or even someone outside of like a selling role, don't let the title fool you. It is very much for sales leaders, for account executives could benefit from listening to it. And of course, SDRs and SDR managers as well. But it's really just a great summary, like you said, of getting into the business, understanding the roles, the operation, but then there's some really cool tactical stuff in there also.
Love that. Good one. Well, I got a bookshelf. I don't know if I'd recommend this exact copy, but this is a very simple book to read. This is Jocko Willink. And Jocko is, first, met him on the Tim Ferriss podcast. He's a Navy SEAL. This is Discipline Equals Freedom. He also has some other books on like extreme ownership and different leadership books. I loved Jocko's books of just extreme ownership, how to get through tough things, and just a great guide in life. And just, if you need a good kick in the ass, good book.
Yeah. Share with us something maybe that you took away from it that you put into practice and are still doing.
So there's one thing that Jocko talks about, and he says, like, if you have an issue, like if one of his, I'm not a Navy guy, so I don't know what his platoon would be called, or like if one of his people talk to him, they would just be like, hey, I'm having issues with that. And Jocko would just be like, good. And then they'd be like, well, why is that good? And he just says, it's good. It's just like problems are good. They can be solved. So that's one thing that you just have the ability to move through tough things. Like, life isn't always going to be perfect, but you have good problems to solve. It's good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. My next one is also an oldie, but a goodie. This is The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Super interesting. And I've talked about this in the pod in past episodes. It's a really, really mind-altering book in so many ways. It was probably written, it was written a long time ago. Like, some of the things that he's going to reference in here are like fax machines and stuff that we don't use as much in B2B sales anymore. But I think two of the biggest takeaways from the book that I remember really internalizing were, one, there is only a certain percentage of people right now that are in the market for whatever you're selling. And as soon as you can start to come to terms with that and focus on how to find those people that are actually searching for your product or a solution for the problem that your product solves, you're going to get a lot more efficient and effective as a seller versus trying to just cast this wide net and sell to people who aren't in the market for what you're selling. That's one thing. And then I think the other lesson that I took away is, he calls it, I want to say it's either the Dream 100 or the Dream 1000. I can't remember now because so many people have talked about it. But let's just call it the Dream 100, would be, you build a list of the most 100 influential people in your industry. So let's just say you sell to CMOs. Maybe you want to put together a list of the top 100 CMOs that fit your ICP at a company that you could sell your product to. And then you focus on trying to connect with those people in a really meaningful way. Mm-hmm. Reach out to them with value first, not necessarily this isn't you building a 100-person prospect list. It's you building a list of potential hubs that you can reach out to and that will help you further connect with your industry. And so we've tried to do this with the show. How do we find the Dream 100 podcast guests for the show? And then once we have those, some number of those on, it'll help us access the rest of that 100 list. And then from that 100, maybe we can scale it to 1,000, the Dream 1000 list, right? And he says, if you do this, you can really, scale your business to the millions and millions of dollars. And I really believe that. I think if you can go out and figure out who the 100 or 1,000 loudest voices are in your ICP profile, then you can go out and start to just build a relationship with those people, connect with them in some meaningful way. So two very, very powerful mindset exercises. And there's a whole book full of them. It's a great read. And I think this is probably like a $4 or $5 book on Amazon.
Man, Jesse, I feel like you and me are very much the same person because I love that book. It's like I listened to that on Audible, like on repeat, probably 4 or 5 times. He talks about pig-headed determination.
Pig-headed, that's the term.
And
dude.
Chet Holmes, he's no longer alive, but he was actually a black belt, and he also like sold in like Fortune 500 companies. And one of the things also from that book that I remember a lot is it's easier to sell clients that you already have as customers than going out to prospect new customers. So I think he uses like a cleaning company, like a carpet cleaning company, and saying like, instead of just selling carpets one time, you sell like a cleaning twice a year or something like that. So very basic, but very impactful steps.
You must have like a photographic memory, because I feel like you almost just like, how long ago did you read that? That is like a perfect summary of one of the case studies that's in the book about the cleaning company.
I don't know. I just listened to that book over and over and over and over. And that's like why I love Audible. Like 1.25 speed. I'll listen to a author, speak at 1.25 rates. And I mean, I have probably, I don't know, like over 100, maybe over 200 books in my Audible account.
And tell the listeners where you tend to listen to podcasts and books. What activity is happening?
Yeah. Gosh. So the Ego lawnmower. So we're green here at the Barmore household. We have an Ego electric lawnmower. So what I do is I listen to podcasts and I also listen to audiobooks when I'm doing the lawn and doing more woodworking projects. So that's like very helpful. And like my number one book I was going to share is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I think I just like it came back into my ethos, and it just makes a lot of sense, especially with having Chris Orlob on the episode talking about basketball is not just a skill. It's like there are so many different other skills, and just learning how to habit stack and really getting into rituals and to get new things, new routines. If you have a new job, if you are trying to do something new, like how do you make that impact? And I really got to get working out again. And so I'm going to use this book to get me back into it, hopefully.
Yeah. Atomic Habits. Yeah. What's one thing a seller could take away that maybe different than anyone else reading it? Cause I'm sure a lot of people read it for a lot of reasons, but yeah, what's one idea you think that someone listening could take away?
I think like if you have something that you don't want to do or that you feel that's like really hard. So maybe prospecting, maybe writing emails, maybe follow up, maybe having a meeting with your boss, but habit stacking. So like basically putting that into a routine of like, okay, after I do this, I'm going to walk down, I'm in a remote environment so I can go down and get a soda water after I do this. So I reward myself after I do that product. Or I put it in between. I sandwich it in something, two activities that I really like. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then after that, I have something to look forward to.
That's so awesome. It's funny because I've always operated that way. I've actually never read Atomic Habits.
What? Oh,
but I just naturally do those kind of things. Like I have little treats or whatever you want to call it. Like I have rewards that I give myself for whatever, finishing an email or a proposal or making a block of cold calls, whatever it is. And my wife thinks this is the craziest thing. She's like, you just like reward yourself by once you get that done, you get to go get a coffee or something. I'm like, yep, that's exactly what I do. And I've just, for whatever reason, I've always done that. And part of it was because I kind of grew up my mom created like a token economy in our house when I was a kid. So when stuff got done, there was usually some kind of like treat or reward for a job well done. And so that's just kind of carried into my sales career.
And one other thing that I think is very impactful, and it talks about like working out, but setting yourself up for success. So when you're prospecting or like when you show up to your office, like make sure you have it set up for optimization. So have your phone, have your, mic, I have everything ready to go in my office so that it's simple for me to do my work here.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make it easy on yourself. All right. My last pick here. This is one you don't hear much about. This is kind of a niche book. And if you're watching this, you'll see that I got it signed by the guys who wrote it, which was pretty cool. Yeah. So this is a book called From Impossible to Inevitable. It's by Aaron Ross, who wrote Predictable Revenue, and Jason Lemkin, who, if you're not following Jason, then you're not in SaaS. He is the godfather of SaaS. He's the founder of SaaStr. He's a successful, both of these guys are very successful entrepreneurs. They worked either in early stage tech companies that are now mega, Salesforce is where Aaron Ross was. Jason Lemkin started a company that became Adobe Sign or something. Echo Sign, I think was the company he's known for. Anyway, both very decent, very good people to follow in the SaaS sales world. Here's where this book was really transformational for me. Mm-hmm. Most of the listeners know who've listened for a long time. I spent the vast majority of my career working in early stage software companies. That's my background. I've had a few stints at some bigger firms, but for the most part, I've been in the front lines, in the trenches at very early stage companies. And what I am trying to say by that is a lot of times I just didn't have a lot of resources. There was people to help, there was coaching, there was mentorship, but you're trying to grow without a lot of resources that a big company might have. And this book was just critical to help me fully get the picture for what goes on inside a SaaS company. And it was really helpful to read it alongside a journey that I was having inside of a very early startup where I was, I think employee number 10. And I was trying to understand the worldview of the founders. And this really helped me do that. What's cool about it though, also, is it focuses a lot on the go-to-market function of an early startup, how to build that, how to think about it, how to think about capturing leads, how to think about hunting for leads and prospects, how to get your messaging dialed in, how to niche down into a specific marketplace, how to sell value, how to price your product. It's really, again, not a very thick book, but you'd be amazed at how much you can get from reading this. And I think what I would say about this book is if you read this book, you'll know more than 90% of other people that work in B2B SaaS sales. And I mean that, like, this is a masterclass in of itself of just how to run a tech business. And it will help you see things from the perspective of an investor. Jason Limkin's a big, angel investor, venture capitalist. And then also from a sales leader, Aaron Ross, early stage sales leader, but also from like the founder standpoint and from a sales leader standpoint. This is also the book that talks about the different types of VPs of sales, which I think is a really interesting topic because there's different types of sales leaders. There's some that are really focused on scaling up something that's already has traction. They're really good at putting charts and graphs together and building out a process and scaling a process. But then there's also like sales leader types that just have to come in and be an evangelist for something that doesn't really exist yet. They have to sell futures, right? And then there's everything in between. There's very rare sales leaders that can take a concept and scale it all the way to call it $100 million run rate company. And it's just really rare to do, but there are people that have done it. And so he kind of goes into how to find that type of person. So if you're someone who is out there listening that has a goal of becoming a sales leader or a vice president or a CRO at some point in your career, it's really interesting to hear Jason and Aaron's perspective on what qualities and what types of sales leaders there are. And you can kind of find out which one you're most aligned to. Are you an evangelist type seller, or are you, more into like pulling reports on Salesforce and looking at specific productivity metrics and things like that? So anyway, great read. Can't recommend it enough. It will seriously put you in the top percentile of tech sellers if you can get cover to cover on that book.
Holy cow. I've not heard that one, Jesse. I'm going to have to order that one.
It's a couple years old. Some of the stuff may be a little outdated, but it's really, really good stuff. He also, there's tons of case studies. So he'll talk about one of the things I'm really passionate about. I'm just going to sidebar for a second here that I don't think enough people think about or care about, but it's a small edge in this very competitive world of B2B tech sales and business development is studying tech history, which is really silly. It sounds really silly, but it's come in handy a lot during my career to just have a little bit of historical context into companies. Like one of the examples is a company called Responsys in this book. And most people haven't heard of Responsys. They became part of Oracle. But it's really interesting to hear how they built Responsys. And I've actually met a bunch of former Responsys execs over the course of my career. And I've been able to say like, oh, I learned all about Responsys from reading this book. And it was so cool that you guys did this and that and had this type of team and you hired these type of people. So going back and like understanding the last 20, 30 years. And we actually just had another guest on. I'm not going to share the guest's name, but he was talking about Mark Benioff reading Behind the Cloud, which is Benioff's biography, talks about how he really kickstarted the concept of SaaS software and brought people off of like these on-premise solutions into the cloud. That's the book is Into the Cloud. And so I think I've done that. I've read Steve Jobs' biography. I've read a few others, Michael Dell's and a handful of others, but not a bad idea if you're interested in the topic to just study like what were some of the great tech companies of the last 100 years, really, at this point, 50, 100 years, and what made them so great, what made Apple so great, Dell, Salesforce, et cetera. And then, what are some other ones? And this one has a lot of really great case studies.
Great advice, Jesse.
All right.
Okay.
Really, really quick before we wrap up the pod, a couple of announcements from Chase and myself. We are really growing the Slack community So we want to make sure that if you're not already in there, jump in, join us in the conversation.
It's free to join.
It's totally free to join. It's a chance to get connected. You can direct message us, interact with other fans of the show. There's a jobs board. Chase keeps that pretty up to date. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I know a lot of listeners out there are probably struggling to find their next thing. We try to keep our job board updated with what we hear about. And then, of course, you can network with some other peers in the industry.
And we really, we really want to connect you. I mean, we want to connect you with other people, however we can help you. I mean, in this game, it's all a human to human connection. We're all about making connections at the Sales Players.
100%. And then the next thing is we're kicking off our newsletter, which if you're a subscriber to the show, if you're in the Slack community, you're already on the newsletter. But if you're not, join the community, or we have on the salesplayers.com page, a way to opt into that. And we're going to start sending out weekly sales plays and just, a weekly digest of some sales plays plus whatever the most recent episode of the show is. So we'd love to have you on the list. We're really going to try to make it as valuable and entertaining to read as possible. It's going to come out on the weekends. I haven't decided. I'll just share this on the air. It's either going to be called Saturday morning sales plays or Sunday morning sales plays. Would love anyone's thoughts on which day is a better day to get an email. The way I think about it is you're going to get a lot of emails during the week, but you're not getting very many emails over the weekend. So it's a chance to kind of like slowly read it and digest it and then try to implement it for the following week. Anything else you want to share there, Chase?
Man, I'm just excited for everything that we have coming out. We have some amazing guests. If you have any guests that you want us to interview, shoot them our way. But it was so cool to have Chris Orlob on here, and we got so many more in the pipeline, and we're just getting started. Yeah.
If you have guest ideas, sponsor ideas, any way you want, anytime you want to reach out to Chase or myself, you can hit us up at team@thesalesplayers.com. Team@thesalesplayers.com is our email address. It gets routed to both Chase and I. So yeah, guest ideas, sponsor ideas, topics you want to hear about, anything, just hit us up. We want to connect.
Thanks to our sponsors, and thank you, Jesse.
All right. That's a wrap.